Welcome, everyone. You're listening to the ImPerfect Podcast. I'm Kathy.
And I'm Kennedy. Join us on this week's episode as we discuss intriguing topics and people of interest that will inspire us to explore all of the unique pieces of ourselves.
We are all imperfectly perfect.
We're glad you're here. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the ImPerfect Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Today we have a guest on the show, and it's someone I've actually known since he was a baby. I had met his parents way back in the 90s, and their son, Francis, who is most well known right now as the Canadian Ninja, grew up in a small town in New Brunswick, and he's been studying and practicing many skills, techniques, and subjects over the past few years. After completing secondary school 2 years early, he went to university where he discovered that he actually just wanted to continue his research at home, studying herbal medicines, Buddhist meditation techniques, various martial arts and cultures, things like that. So he's even found a deep passion for staff skills, and staff being a long stick looking device, not a staff of people that work for you.
Yeah, and that's just a condensed list. He has studied and looked into many different topics and subjects. So Francis has since started to teach others and the knowledge and skills he has acquired, and has even launched his own online platform. We're very excited to talk with Francis today because he has been traveling about and has been putting so much time into his studies, interests, and practices. He continuously surprises us with the work he's doing and his dedication and commitment to it.
So here's Francis.
Hey, Francis, it's been a long time since we've actually spoken or seen each other in person for that matter. What have you been up to? Lots of stuff, eh?
Yeah, I've been away from New Brunswick for a long time and traveling Canada and kind of working on my own business and
Yeah.
refining my skills and gaining. I lived in the mountains for a little bit. I built a little bush camp and stayed in there, not so legally, and then I got I got the calling to go to the city, so I moved to Calgary, and I lived in a home for maybe 4 months before I got sick of those four walls and decided to live on the streets for a little while.
Yeah.
And then I got sick of the streets because I got my stuff stolen, and so I moved to Montreal, got a job. Then I lost my job because my boss went bankrupt, and now I got a new job. God blessed me with a spot in Mont Tremblant, back in the mountains, back in nature.
Wow.
Feeling a lot better about it.
Good.
It sounds like you've been up to a lot of stuff since I first might have met you when you were little. You and Kennedy used to have tough time together when we go out to meet with your mom and dad. So we're interested in knowing what your story is. Who is Francis, and what are your interests and your passions?
Right. So,
It's a big question, eh?
my upbringing, you could say, I skipped a couple grades in school, and so I switched to a lot of friend groups and met a bunch of different people. But I was also a lot in my studies, and um, I really liked one thing though, which was my martial arts classes, and that's one thing. Like, I went to university when I was 15, and I at that time I was atheistic and kind of not sure about life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting really bored of the program there because I wasn't learning anything. And I talked to my guy, like the one of the leaders of the science programs there, and he kind of told me that maybe I had to look somewhere else for what I really wanted to study. And so I spent another year in college just because I wanted to learn about, I was confused about how computers function. I was like, how are these things, like, where's the intelligence stored in these things?
Right.
Never really learned that. I studied IT there, and all I learned was how to put pieces together inside of a desktop. And so I quit that as well. Um, Went back to work, and by the time I was 18, I started my first business, um, which was like my first attempt at business. I was making little jewelry out of gemstones,
Mm,
and also by that time, I was really suffering and like confused by the state of the world, and I wanted to find peace. And so I got into spirituality, and more specifically, Theravada Buddhism was my main teaching that I was following, and doing a lot of meditation. I did a lot of different psychedelic substances, and I did find it taught me a lot, brought me somewhere, um, but I never, it never, like the drugs. I figured I should be able to do this, like unlock my mind without them. And
mm,
so I went deeper on my spiritual journey, and also I got a bit distracted with building my new business, which was in marketing. And so for some time I was working 80 hours a week and set spirituality aside. But one thing that stuck with me all along my journey was martial arts.
mm,
And I figured, why don't I just focus on that? And I also hated to spend my whole day on a computer. Um, so one summer in 2019, I just I was thinking, why don't I just, because I'm working on my computer, I'm making a lot of money. I don't really need to work full time.
mhm,
Um, why don't I just start traveling in my car? And the idea ran in my mind for about a week until I met someone. Uh, I was watching the sunset in Carrefour de la Mer in Caracat. So if you ever go to Caracat, you gotta see the sunset in Carrefour de la Mer. It's amazing. There's a little uh, walkway and next to the harbor, and you're kind of sitting on the water and just seeing the sunset there. It's very beautiful. And I met this lady who was traveling across Canada, and I was like, in my mind, I was like, I've seen her before, but no, it was her first time around, and she was only in Caracat for a day. And so, right as she was about to leave, I was like, "Do you need a co-pilot?" And she's like, I guess it could be useful." And so I went back home. I woke up my mom at like midnight and told her, "Hey, you gotta bring me to work in the morning, like to her workplace, because some random stranger was going to pick me up and I was going to drive across Canada with them."
Wow.
She freaked out. She couldn't sleep until like 4 a.m. And yeah, the next morning I left. I visited the whole of the Atlantic, and we took about 2 months to visit the whole of Canada.
Wow.
I fell in love with the BC mountain,
Mhm,
and I wanted to stay in those mountains for a little while, but my father was sick, so I went back home for a bit. And there, I just got addicted to this road life. So I bought a van and started living in my van a bit, visiting New Brunswick. And COVID hit at that time, so couldn't
right.
leave New Brunswick. But around September that year, the end of August actually, my van broke down, and I still had a car in BC, because long story short, her car broke down. We took my car, and um, I left my car in BC at some people that I had met there
Mhm.
at their house. And so I'm like, well, why don't I go and go get that vehicle? 'Cause my van's gonna cost me $3,000 to fix, and I can spend a lot less on a flight ticket.
Right.
So that same day, very similarly to the last happening, someone calls me. He's like, "You want to go to BC? I want to go back home." And so someone
Things
had
are lining up, eh? Yeah.
managed to get in New Brunswick. I met them in early August, and she was like, "You want to fly to BC with me?" I'm like, "Yeah, I gotta go get my car." And so flew back in BC, rode the car till the wheels fall off, like they say. Ended up I stayed in Squamish for a while, and I lived in this guy's garage, and I just spent the whole winter training. One thing I liked about there is like I want to spend a winter without snow, and well, I kind of noticed there's another edge to that sword. If you go to BC, you won't see the sun for 3 weeks
Mm.
during the winter. It's just very cloudy and rainy. It's the rainforest, so it can just rain every day for a few
Mhm.
weeks. But there, I spent a lot of time training. I made a little dojo in the garage, and I every time it was sunny outside, I'd be out training for hours. And I also like got a couple hikes in the mountains, but at one point I was like, I want to like really get the full mountain experience. And then someone tells me, "Hey, I'm going to the Sunshine Coast. You should try it. You love it there." Like a few days later, as I'm building this idea up in my
Right.
mind, so there I am on the Sunshine Coast, and I at that time starting to build a stronger relationship with God and all that. And I asked God, I told him, when I get to the right spot where you want me, just make sure I don't get out of there. Like let something fuck up with the car or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so someone tells me to go to this specific mountain, this old shaman lady I met there. And so I go up that mountain, and right I find the spot. I'm like, okay, my engine is starting to really stink. Like the car is just like not doing so well. I'm like, I'm gonna park here for a while. And turns out I really like this spot. And as I'm trying to drive out of where I parked, um, my car won't start. The battery's dead.
Mhm.
And I'm like, shit. So I call the towing to get my battery boosted. They come and boost my battery, and as I'm trying to drive out, I get a flat tire.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I stayed up there for a little while. I had prepared the occasion because I knew I had prayed for this before it
Yeah.
happened.
Wow, it sounds like
So,
you've had some pretty neat adventures along the way.
well, I was doing prayer much like they do in Islam without knowing it, like sticking my head on the forehead and all that. When I got to Calgary, I
Mhm.
was doing this like every morning and thinking about, okay, it's the morning, so we should be mourning, right? And so I had this three prayer method, which I was thinking about what can I mourn, what am I grateful for, and what can I repent.
Mhm.
And so I was doing that every morning. And then I met this awesome dude named Hassan, he's back in Jordan now, his home country. But he taught me a little bit about Islam, and that summer I took my well, there's this thing in Islam where you say you recognize Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad as great teachers, and so one day I was like, I need a Quran, and boom, there comes this guy on the street corner giving away Qurans. And yeah, I was training Hassam in martial arts and energy work and all that. A bunch of stuff I learned along my way. I was kind of given those teachings through my practice. They just came up as if an external force was teaching me, or like I was just developing these techniques to keep my energy up when I'm training for a long time, or when I'm spinning my staffs. It takes a lot of mental energy, and so
So,
I built up a lot of different techniques to keep up with that, and then I went and studied more about qigong and all of that, and the internal martial arts, and I noticed that they practice a lot of those techniques as well as inside of yoga. They do a lot of these techniques that just kind of came to me.
So what is it that makes you feel most inspired? Is it, in my opinion, with what I see with what you're putting on your social media platform, it seems to be with the staff. Would you say that's accurate, or what makes you
Yeah.
feel most inspired? What do you feel most attached to or called to do?
So the staff, I love it so much because one of my goals is to develop superhuman skills, right? And so I find that it's a great way to really push yourself while keeping the training very, very fun. Like it's the most fun thing I figured out, and it's so simplistic as well. Like you can do this training with anything. When I'm at work, I do my staff training with the towels, like right?
Why
And
don't
throwing them
you,
the same way.
Kennedy,
And
I was going to suggest, why don't you put up some of the videos so our viewers, the people that are watching at home, will be able to know what we're talking about here.
Sure. So obviously, we, just for the people who are watching the actual video, you'll be able to see, but for those that are listening in audio, we'll just read the title for you so that you can kind of follow along that way. Okay, so we'll start with this one here. So this one's called Energy Training, and it's got Francis out in nature, and I'll let him speak to it after we watch the video. So, Francis, did you maybe want to speak a bit on that? That must have sounded strange for someone listening just to the audio. So maybe you can describe.
yeah, so here I'm doing some breathing techniques combined with what I call irradiation. It's like if you know about isometric exercises, basically you're flexing all your muscles as much as you can, and I'm combining that with some breathing techniques. And to put it like scientifically, you're compressing your lungs like a sponge, which allows you to absorb a lot more energy from your breath. But there's a lot more to it. I feel like it just fires up your energy so much, and the way you're squeezing your body, I feel like maybe it massages your adrenal glands, because it really like fires up your energy. There's this I developed by again, like training for extensive periods. And I was like, okay, how do I push my energy further and further? And it came to me like different breathing techniques. But that's the main thing is you take a deep breath
Mm.
and you squeeze that inside of you. And also there's a bit of a visualization aspect where you kind of open up all your pores in your body and let your energy explode.
Mm.
It fires up your aura in a sense. And if I do this, I've noticed a couple different things. One, I get a lot more energy, but I'm also more resistant to impact. So if I do this before uh, doing bone conditioning, for example, like I'll be able to take hits, um, like hits that are a lot heavier than in my normal state.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
then I learned just a few months ago that in karate they do this exercise called sanchin, which is very similar to that, where they have the same breathing where they go
Mm.
and they flex all their muscles and compress their glands. And sanchin is known for having those effects where they make the practitioner pretty much invincible to strikes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go to the next one. So this one's titled Inner Panther. And again, Francis is out in nature. And I believe, no, your staff may not be in this one. I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll watch.
Have drumsticks
What's that?
on that one. I'm using drumsticks on that one to
Okay.
simulate knives.
Okay. Awesome.
Great.
I can do that.
All right. Yeah, why are you laughing?
Yeah.
So is this
Yeah.
just something that you're just messing around, or is there technique involved with that? I mean, there's technique involved, but I was like, no, wait, there's technique, but
This is one of
Easy.
the side effects of amping up your energy too much.
okay.
I had no intention. So for those who are listening to just audio, in this video, I straight up stick one of the knives in my mouth and I start doing acrobatics. I did do a little bit of gymnastics, and this is a bit inspired by capoeira. If you don't know about capoeira, it's a mix of like martial arts and dance that was developed. Well, it kind of has roots in Africa, but it's popularized in Brazil. Where they do a lot of these gymnastic flips and they turn those into kicks and all of that. But yeah, I remember what happened there. It's just like I felt my inner animal come through, and yeah, the way I just put that knife in my mouth and started doing flips, I thought it was just hilarious.
Yeah, no, it's really cool too to watch.
That's really neat.
So we'll do another one. So this one's titled Smashing Rocks. Francis is near like a waterfall and with rocks, and he'll explain further.
So
It brings back memories of one time we went up to visit you guys, and you were running around in the backyard and bare feet, and your hair was cut about to here, and you were literally swinging from the trees, and we kind of had a little joke going, calling you Tarzan. So sort of reminiscent of that a bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
this one's actually in New Brunswick. That summer before I flew back, I was living in my van, and that was one of my favorite spots I found. I was hunting the New Brunswick waterfall.
Mhm.
Anyways, like I mentioned before, if you do those breathing exercises and really amp up your energy, your body becomes a lot harder and your strikes become a lot more impactful. And so there's that aspect of conditioning your bones to make them more dense, but there's also the aspect of having the proper energy practice so that you can do this without causing injury to yourself.
Mm.
And so some people only condition the bones, but in Chinese martial arts and in internal martial arts, they teach you that there's more to that. There's actual like energy work you can do to strengthen your strikes and make your body a lot more resilient if you amp up your aura.
Mm.
Uh, Fun thing also I was told is that Chinese massage therapists will do the same. They call it iron palm training, where you smack your hand like that onto a. They usually will use a metal plate or a bean bag or a bag of metal balls. But the idea is when they do that for massage, they're wicking off the energy that they might have picked up from someone. Because when you're healing them through massage, you're kind of like grabbing their negative energy,
Right.
and that helps it uh, not enter your body, right? So you're wicking it off.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So we also had this one. I can't pronounce it. Maybe you want to say it, Francis.
This is called well, Shuriken Jutsu, more specifically Bo Shuriken Jutsu and light object throwing. So again, with energy work, you can concentrate your power to turn a light object into a deadly weapon.
Mm.
I first saw this in a kung fu movie when I first started throwing things. It's because I saw in the kung fu movies. I was watching a lot of those when I was in my early 20s and late teens, and they this guy throws a pair of chopsticks through the wall, and I'm like,
I want to
whoa,
do that.
I wonder if I can do that.
Right.
And so the wall in my mom's house became full of holes.
Did the chopsticks make it through the wall at all, or?
Yeah, I was able to stick the chopsticks into the drywall there pretty easily after a while.
Your poor mom.
And I eventually moved down because I like to throw the toothpicks
Yeah.
because I've been living in apartments. This is when I was in Calgary. And when you're indoors, and I mean, I didn't want to give everywhere the same treatment that I gave to my mom's
Right.
wall. So I'm like, okay, what can I throw that's not gonna make a hole in the wall? And I started throwing toothpicks.
Right. Right. I'll show the video really quick. Yeah, so quite literally, like he described, he has it's a styrofoam head and a toothpick, and he's doing the apartment version of chopsticks through a wall.
Yeah, don't make Francis mad while you're in a restaurant with him.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have one last one here. It's staff training. Again, he's outside in nature with his staff. So I'll play this one quickly. Yeah, so I feel this is where, I mean, as a viewer, because these 5 videos are just a small snippet of what's actually out there and what you put out for content on your social media, which is really cool. But as a viewer, this is what to me is most visually intriguing, because
Mhm.
you can see you're thriving in that. Like that's where you can see that your true self comes out. I can see it as a viewer is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, staff training is definitely my favorite, and like maybe 60 to 80% of my training, depending on what my mood is and where I am and all of that. If I had the equipment to throw knives more,
Right.
and like a good spot, but you can't go to the park and start throwing knives, right?
Yeah,
Right.
probably not.
So
Can you
that's why,
explain? Sorry.
yeah.
I was just going to say, I would like to know more about what a staff is. Like to me, it looks like a giant pickup stick that you used to play when you're a kid, but obviously it's not that. So is there a historical purpose for that? Is it just a tool you use in training?
So I started training staff when I was 8, and well, the bow staff is in Japan, they call it bow staff. In China, they call it gunshu, or gunshu is the art of the bow staff. The gun is the actual name for the bow staff. It's a 6-foot pole that they've been using for a long time, as it's probably one of man's oldest weapons. It's like a long club, but I use 4-footer staffs for the reasons that um, I got used to them for training indoors. It's a lot easier
Mm.
to spin those without making holes in your ceiling.
Yeah.
Mm.
Knocking a light
Um,
fixture.
they're a lot easier to carry when you're a traveler, and they're kind of a little bit more. They don't attract attention as much as a man walking around with a
Right.
Right.
Is
pole
it
that's taller than him.
is it
But
pointed on the end, or is it the same all the way through?
I'll green line it here.
Okay.
So here's my staff. I make these, and another reason that I play with 4 feet instead of longer staffs is that I buy the dowels from the hardware store. They're 4 foot long,
Mm.
and I don't have to cut them or do anything to them except wrap them. Now I can wrap these in very fancy ways. I actually make staffs that have a copper wire going through them and crystal dust and a copper plate at the bottom.
I've seen you do those ones.
Copper
Those ones are
wire,
nice.
copper wire in the handle, which allows you to connect with the earth, the same as walking barefoot. Now, there's a lot of health benefits to that. Um, that like we barely ever get unless we actually put our hands or feet on the ground.
Yeah.
There's actually some people that buy blankets, and I bought one myself. I tested it. You can buy these blankets that you plug into your wall outlet, and they have silver wire going through the blanket, and it helps you sleep. Like I was dealing with a bit of insomnia, and I bought that thing, and I slept so well.
I have a grounding mat for client use.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say that I was gonna bring it up
Good.
for
So
mom.
you know about these?
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Mom, does it plug into the wall, or is
It does plug in, but it just plugs into the ground, so it
right?
discharges the additional energy that you're carrying and it takes it out on the ground.
Yeah.
Really cool.
I noticed the big difference sleeping with those, and it's one of the reasons. Like when I was living outdoors, I loved sleeping on the ground. I just find that I'm so much more well rested when I do.
Mhm.
It also makes me kind of dislike those spring mattresses because all those coils might do something to your energy.
Yeah, no, exactly. to go back to the staff,
Yeah.
I wanted to give you the opportunity. Do you make these off of request for people? I don't
Yeah,
really, yeah.
I do make custom staffs for people,
Hmm.
and I like to make those very nice organite ones for anyone who's interested. They're kind of a rare piece that, as far as I know, only I make grounding walking sticks.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So make sure to send me a message if you're interested. They do take almost a whole day's work to make, so sometimes they're like 4 to 8 hours of work put into them, and I
Wow.
also charge them with my energy as I'm making them. The same way like I'm doing the breathing techniques where I put a lot of energy in my hands. I try and transfer that to the staff as I'm taping it.
Okay. We just had a couple more questions for you, Francis. Just kind of one standard that we like to ask everyone. Do you have any particular biggest regret or failure?
Um, right now it's smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah.
Like I said, I delved in a lot of different drugs and all of that, and did spend some time, a few times, completely clear off the drugs. And one thing I keep as a good like measure of where I'm doing spiritually is how well things synchronize around me.
Right.
Um, as if you start getting in spirituality, um, and you start your progress and all of that, you start noticing that oftentimes you look at your phone and it's a specific number that's like all aligned, like 222, 333, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, right? Um, the girl which I traveled across Canada with was she was like very atheistic and like did not believe in anything spiritual. And then she started hanging out with me and she's like, why is it that every night when I check my phone it's 2222?
Yeah.
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 Mom and I
And
have that happen all the time to the point that we'll message each other sometimes 5 times a day with screenshots of when we've looked at our phones, and
It's
it's
3:33.
right,
It's
right.
4:44.
It's
yeah,
crazy.
Yeah.
when that started happening to me, I was taking so many screenshots of it, and I had made a Facebook page to record all of that. And even once, because one of my favorite numbers is 47, and I got this, I was watching this YouTube video, and the views were like 100101. And I was like, this is binary code.
Yeah.
Bet it's for number 47. And I put it in the calculator. It was for number 47.
That's crazy, eh?
Wow. So
Crazy.
strange.
Yeah.
So, how about if we asked you what's the most important thing you've learned thus far in your life? What would your answer be?
Oh, prayer.
Hmm.
How to properly pray and build that relationship with God. Like and it goes back to like synchronicities, and the synchronicities themselves is what got me out of atheism. And it's like there must be a higher force aligning all of this, or at least something that we
Right.
don't see that's like putting all these puzzle pieces together.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And again, when we just cut for a second there, so I could go get my staff, um, I got a notification saying it's time to pray, like right on time. So I took the time to bow down and do a very quick
How
prayer and all
interesting.
that. Because Muslims, they're supposed to pray 5 times a day.
Hmm.
Um, and so I've been trying. I got an app that reminds me of the proper prayer times. I'm trying to keep up with that now. But it's such a beautiful experience. Like I said, I did a lot of drugs. Trying to like find God and find out about the unseen. And Um, Nothing makes me high like prayer does. A proper prayer seance is just, I often cry out of like a mix of bliss and all kinds of other emotions, and it's just, I feel the most intense beauty when I'm praying.
That's a big line. Nothing makes me
Wow.
higher than prayer.
Yeah,
That's a big line. Yeah. So we just had one more quick question, and then I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of do your plug, so where people can find you and whatnot. But we want to know what makes you imperfect.
right. I mean, I am like everyone else in some
Mhm.
sense where, I do struggle with a lot of things. I find like sometimes I have trouble building relationships with people, and somehow I am learning a lot more about this because I started working at Starbucks. See, I'm like everyone else right now. I work at Starbucks. I'm a barista. So one thing that I didn't expect from, because I wanted to work in cafes again. I love working in restaurants, and because it's a lot of like fast paced, like doing
Yeah.
things, and I really get to get in the flow state, which is what I learned through the stats. And I could talk a lot more about that, but um, Starbucks, part of their philosophy is that you need to build a relationship with the customers, and it's just not just like, "Hi, how are you? Here's your coffee." It's really like asking them like, "Hey, what's their day been like?
Hmm.
Why are they here today?" Like we're up in a pretty touristic place, so I'm asking people like what brings them to Starbucks, and small talk has always been hard for me, and I'm learning that it's not that hard of a thing if you just put yourself to it and learn to have a couple questions. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good answer. Yeah. Um, yeah, because I feel like we can all relate to that, just putting yourself out there. And there's something that goes without saying that to make yourself uncomfortable puts you in situations that you would never expect to be in. So it's
mhm,
important. So we did want to give you the opportunity to let people know where they can find you if they're interested in looking at your content, if they're interested in, I know you're soon going to launch an online course or teaching. Maybe you want to talk about that. And yeah, like
yeah,
staffs, things like that, where they can find you.
cool. So you can find me, the most easiest way to find me, and you can send me a message on there. And I love to talk with people and just teach them what I know. So you can find me on Instagram at the.canadian.ninja. And in my bio there, you'll find a link to my website where I have a whole staff basics program where I teach you most of the basic movements to learn with the staff. And also, I have a whole video on how to make them where I make one with you guys and you see the
Oh,
whole
nice.
process and how to
Mm.
tape it properly and how to make it really nice and solid.
Okay, great.
And
Is
I also have two courses I'm working on. One is going to be for advanced staff, and I want a more holistic ninja program where I teach a bit more of the spiritual skills that I learned, as well as some fitness stuff. So, complete ninja routine, which part of being a ninja is not just the physical movement aspects, but it's a lot of spiritual training as well and developing those skills.
and you're creating a community all at the same time, right? So just it multiplies by you putting yourself out there and putting your teachings out. You also have, correct me if I'm wrong, another Instagram. It's ninja.spirit.academy.
Oh yeah, I just started this one
Okay.
to showcase a lot more about the spiritual aspects and a bunch of different spiritual teachings. I started a series on the Kuji-in, which I could talk a bit more about, but this is what mudras are,
Mm-hmm.
and the Kuji-in is a great way to build up that inner power. I also speak about the mirror side of the Kuji-in, which is because if you build too much power without it's like having fire that doesn't have a proper surrounding, it'll burn down the whole forest, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
need to build a proper fire pit around that. And I'll be talking about that aspect as well. I also have a post on, I'm working a lot with anime. If you guys don't know anime, it's Japanese animations where there's a lot of action stuff and there's a lot of actual energy teachings you can find in anime that are kind of exaggerated or portrayed as fantastic or fiction. But I found a lot of things in anime that are very congruent with what I learned in training. And so I do have a series on my website called Energen Anime where I speak about the actual teachings that you can find in anime and how they apply in real life.
Okay, great. Yeah, and
Interesting.
it's funny you bring that up. I was actually discussing with a friend the other day, all of the hidden teachings in anime, because they love to watch anime, and I haven't given it a fair chance, but I was asking their opinion. Maybe I can ask you too on where to start because it's overwhelming for someone that doesn't know where to start or what to watch. So you and I can chat on the side,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. We super appreciate it. We know that you're hopping all over the place and you're busy and doing lots of things and always learning. And we knew that everything that you live by and what we can see you doing on social media and setting up your online platform and everything, it's very much the message we're trying to portray, which is just go for it. And if it's imperfect, that's okay because you're doing something that you love. So we really appreciate you taking the time today.
Bless. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
If you or someone you know has a unique story to tell, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at theimperfectpodcast@outlook.com.
For more information and how to connect with us on social media, you can visit us at our website, theimperfectpodcast.ca.
And from whichever platform you are listening to this episode, be sure to like, share, and leave us a review. We would really appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode.
We look forward to hearing your feedback and seeing you all find that extra joy and embrace your own imperfect.
See you next week.